But if you can picture the neighborhoods back then, so lots of kids.
It felt like a living neighborhood. It was filled with yelling, it was filled with laughter.
We lived along the river on the dirt road Alameda. When it used to rain, our parents would tell us to get the tubes and go in the river, not stay out of the river. You know, it's go in. If it's flooding, go in, hurry. I'll pick you up at St. Francis.
Lots of neighborhood stores. I think I counted right in this area about 12 of them. And now people, especially people that are from Santa Fe or that have been here for a while, they'll walk by and they're so appreciative that the business still remains because it's a little part of the past.
Knowing your history and appreciating your culture makes you strong. My roots are still on Garcia Street. I guess my soul, a lot of it has to be there at the cemetery too because of my ancestors that were buried there. Everybody helped me. God helped me, relatives, my brothers. At that time, we were all building our own homes. Just little by little, I just kept collecting materials and using them where I could use them, you know. If you've never been raised in an old house, you don't know what it's like, you know, just adobe and dust and vigas and all that. You want something new. The idea of buying a new place is really exciting, you know, so they'll sell and end up buying a trailer on the south side of town. And then they realize later on that they've really made a mistake financially, and because once you leave the east side, there's no way of coming back.
I always go up there, you know. I still visit. I still look at the area as my neighborhood. We used to call it the barrio, you know. There's so many people that have moved out of what we looked at as a cultural place of living, you know. The family couldn't really agree on who should take over the property or whether they should keep the property, but they were all in need of money is what it sounded like. Nobody could really afford to live in the location. They couldn't afford the taxes anymore. They couldn't afford, you know, we had big houses coming in. You had multi-million-dollar homes coming in, and property values went up. And so they all just agreed that it would be in best to sell the property. There's a emotional, physical, mental, everything tied to that property. Saw my grandmother pass away on that property. My grandfather saw how hard they worked for it. But selling it for $290,000 and to see it get flipped for $1.8 million is it's kind of a slap in your face.
I kind of get a little passionate when people are getting pushed out of their home, out of their neighborhoods due to the fact that our city has to progress. We have to build and well, I'm all for that too, but I don't think at the expense of people losing their place in this town.
The east side has changed drastically since I was little, and there are more and more houses going up and more private property cutting across these like wide swaths of land that I've had a relationship with, a wild relationship with my whole life. Because I know the value of what it means to grow up in these like houses which have soul and which contain the soul or help contain the soul of this place, which is what so many people who move to Santa Fe are moving here for. I want people who don't have great means and who are making, you know, sacrifices every day to live in this place, to also be able to live in those places.
The house was built
in 1935. From there, they just added on rooms as the family grew. Mom and Dad built it all. And all adobes were made by them. And my mom and dad always joked about when they argue about building, when they were putting their adobes, Mom would get a pile of mud and write at my dad. Not to be so stubborn. Living in this house with so much of my mom and dad in it, it's like they never left, because it was done by their hands. It was done with their sweat and their everything that they had. It's important for me to live here and to raise my son here so that he will know the value of what the past brings to the future, you know, and he can continue, hopefully, learning about his grandparents and what they did and how they contributed.
Historical preservation, by its nature, has a subjective quality where it's based on people's opinions and their experiences individually, and it's a creative process. And I think it's the subjective nature of it can be challenging because we don't all agree. We don't all have the same tastes. And how do you regulate that? You know, it's a small group of people that do that, and they do the best they can. You know, the results I think are good.
I've always felt like interactions with the historic board were positive. Every time I've gone back, my buildings have gotten better. They haven't gotten worse. Because guess what? I've thought about them more.
A women's group got together and they wanted to protect Mount Vernon, and that was the first real historic preservation effort that was created in this country. And so for a long time, historic preservation was preserving the houses of wealthy white people, wealthy and powerful white people. And that's a form of cultural preservation. It's just that it's one culture and nobody else's, you know. So I think that efforts to broaden this perspective of it are really worth doing.
We were afraid to approach the H board because we were afraid that they would deny our request.
These windows are old, what, 80 years old maybe, you know? And they need to be restored. And we have to be able to at least do it in kind. Okay, let us do it in kind. But the process we have to go through it is like a nightmare just to get them to agree to put it in. I mean, it's not functional. How are we going to keep these houses preserved if we can't at least, you know, a little common sense? It lived Mom and Dad's life. Now we got to get it to stay
took us
ours.
Up to 10 years to actually see or to have the Historic Review Board allow us to change our windows.
I want someone from Santa Fe to be able to walk in the building permit office and get something approved on the east side on their family's property. And they can't do that now because they're so overwhelmed by codes and what the city officials tell them, the hurdles they have to jump, that they just get in a fetal position and that's it.
I think it negates the possibility of locals being able to do construction in accordance with their codes, because it costs money to try to preserve stuff like that. It costs money to invest in materials to try to make it look that old-fashioned style or that historic style.
And what is it protecting, and really who is this for, and what are the point of these historic codes? And like, yeah, cool, it's great to have charming adobes, but like, for who? So it's not just building new affordable housing, but like keeping the housing that we have affordable.
What historic doesn't do is be like, okay, can we support your multi-generational family? Can we support you staying here? This family staying here? Can we support like bringing you back? Because it's about keeping this beautiful and stunning and like we're this work of art where it doesn't like support the people and like and how people actually need to work and live and give to their kids and, you know, be able to afford it.
My dad would always say, I'm sorry to have to tell you that all the Hispanic families are going to move out, and the only thing that's going to remain are the names of the streets that are in Spanish. And boy, has that come to be.
Well, some people are returning back to the old neighborhoods. The feeling is when people are coming back that belonged here in this area, it's that sense of warmth once again, of knowing someone, of actually becoming familiar with these families once again.
I think the question is not that one type of person is missing something and is nostalgic for it, but that in some ways we're all nostalgic for something that we think was better. And really what that means is that we have work to do to make our lives close and intimate and integrated and community oriented, and that's been a comfort because it makes it a human story, not a Hispanic story, not a displaced person story, not a new person story, just a story.